This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised. Don't forget to view our spoiler-free companion video on our Half Past Podcast channel on YouTube. Welcome to the Half Past Podcast. This is episode 60, the movie review of Power Rangers. There's no trailer for this week, so we're just going to chat this up with my best friend, Ian Jones.
How you doing, buddy?
I am doing all right, man. So we decided that to do this makeup cast, which we should probably do more often because we miss a lot of movies.
Right, yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to do this one, but you said that you were really excited about talking about this because you had a lot of things to say. So
sure,
I was hoping we go ahead and do this thing, huh?
Yeah, so one of the things, just kind of getting in there, I watched the show as a kid.
Yes, I did too, yeah.
I tried watching the first season, which is something like 75 episodes.
Gee, is it that many episodes?
It is. That is insanely ridiculous. Those at the time they were kids. They were like in their late teens, and they got screwed over by the studio. I mean, the studio basically bought them a house to live in Southern California. Yeah. But they didn't make a whole lot of money, not even in syndication. I mean,
it's a shame, really.
It was really unfortunate because it became so popular. But you could, 75 episodes in a season, you can get away with doing that kind of stuff when half of the TV show comes from Japan and maybe doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
Anyway, and I think a lot of people don't realize that Rita, all the action sequences, I mean, they're filming shots with these kids in Southern California, and then all the Power Ranger stuff is taking place in a rock quarry in Japan where it's freezing cold. And I tried watching an episode and they're just unwatchable. I mean, there was something going on with the bullies and like all these cartoonish sound effects, and I was just like, did I really enjoy this?
Oh yeah,
in middle school.
That thing. See, it was definitely elementary school for me, like because you're a little bit older.
I'm older.
Yeah, so it was basically like 4th and 5th grade, that time period for me.
Yeah,
and so. The show, I've tried to go back and watch this show, like not recently, but like when I tried watching it, it is just god awful. It's a terrible show. And there's the only way it makes sense is for kids. Like it's just there's a lot of fighting going on. There's somewhat of a plot going on, but for the most part, it's just silly and ridiculous and just god awful of a show. But man, did I enjoy the crap out of it as a child.
Right, yeah. And I mean, for me, it was one of those, this was one of those things where like I didn't share with my classmates my obsession with the Power Rangers because everyone was like, well, that's for little kids. And I was just like, oh yeah, it's for little kids. And it's awesome.
There's a story in here because we've had this discussion before, like years ago, about Power Rangers and like other shows because for the longest, like when I was a kid, everybody loved Power Rangers. So when I was in school, it was not a problem at all. Like kids were just we were like fighting over who was going to be the Green Ranger during recess. Like that's what we would do. That's what we would do. So it was so weird when you're telling me that you had to like hide that you're...
Oh, yeah. I hit it. In fact, one time... This is really bad. One time, I had a friend over, and I was really fortunate as a kid. So I had a lot of the toys and everything.
Yeah.
And I had a friend over, and he's like, what's the deal with all these Power Rangers toys? And the thing I told him, no kidding, the thing I told him was that my cousin came over and swapped them out for my Ninja Turtle toys.
Oh my Yeah,
that is like the thing I told him on the spot.
as a prank.
As a
You
prank.
had to hide it via a prank. It's funny
Oh,
that you say that because even when we talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, when I was a kid, everybody liked Raphael, but I was a fan of Michelangelo. And
I
so
know.
I was the only kid that was like Michelangelo. All the other kids were Raphael. But
This
in
is
your
ridiculous.
case, it was
Yes,
completely the
it was the
opposite.
opposite. I want to slap you. I was the only Raphael fan, and I still am to this day. I'm a huge supporter of that character. It's one of my favorite characters ever. But everyone was just all about Michelangelo.
It was such a weird thing. In my school, everybody was a fan of Raphael, and I had to like sit here and just be like, "Well, I like Michelangelo."
I can't believe it. Like,
Oh, that's
even though I
crazy.
trust you completely, I don't believe it to this day.
Oh, that's great. You know, there was another thing I wanted to mention actually, because this past week, even though we just been just like a mess with the movies, this week we lost Don Rickles, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
snowboarding, right?
yeah, we lost
Snowboarding
this past week we lost Don Rickles,
crashed
and
into a tree.
yeah, and he was like the first like takedown type comic, you know. And I was reading a story about this guy, and one of the things that made him so famous was he was at like this event, and it had Frank Sinatra there, and Frank Sinatra is known for just not being a very good sport about things, right? He's just known as that type of guy. And Frank Sinatra enters the room, and obviously everybody like knows that he is because it's freaking Frank Sinatra. But Don Rickles says on he's on the mic and he goes, "Make yourself at home, Frank. Punch someone."
Oh
and,
my goodness. Oh, this wasn't the story I thought you were gonna tell. This is great. Okay.
and so Frank Sinatra just starts laughing his ass off the whole
Oh
time.
my goodness.
And so, like, after that time, that, like, made Don Rickles famous because he was like, that was when he, like, knew his style of comedy was perfect because he was able to take down Frank Sinatra. And he was just such a good sport about it and just laughed his ass off. And so they actually, like, later on, Frank Sinatra would invite him to, like, you know, like events and stuff to do the comedy there after
Right.
that. So it's just like such a crazy thing, man.
I mean, there's a really good one after that where they kept running into each other.
Yeah.
The same restaurants and everything, and Don Rickles had a date, and so he was able to pull Frank aside and say, you know, would you mind coming over to the table?
Yeah.
And saying hi to me when my date shows up.
Nice.
And Frank was like, all right, you know,
Yeah.
I'll do that. And so Don Rickles is sitting there with his date, and Frank Sinatra comes up, and he's just really friendly and everything. And he says, "Hey, Don, how you doing?" And Don looks over at him and says, "Not now, Frank. How many times have I told you not to bother me?" Oh. So at that point, I think Frank Sinatra lost it and just started, you know, laughing hysterically. But I mean, that's like one of my all-time favorite like celebrity stories ever.
Oh man.
Oh.
That is hilarious, man. Oh, you know, I know it's really weird going into this Don Rickles thing, but man, oh, I'm crying a little bit. That's funny. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, make yourself at home. Punch somebody.
That's so mad.
Jeez,
Oh man. This is what happens when we don't have a trailer to discuss.
Right. Okay. So, which is fun. It's fun sometimes.
It's fun.
Okay. Well, how about getting us back on the Power Rangers track?
Yeah, we'll sit back on the Power Rangers track. So, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention, because I was such a fan of the show, and I never knew this, but Walter Jones, the original Black Power Ranger, he doesn't have a middle finger.
What?
And yes, for years, they shot around the fact that he didn't have a middle finger.
No, that's so weird.
Yeah, I know. And, he did all this, he was really sort of like the one stunt guy that they had too, that they were able to use. And
yeah, because he's actually trained.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I didn't even know this. And I feel bad for being such a, I was such a fan of the show to not know this about one of the actors, but they did a pretty good job hiding it. But I noticed it in the photo because the cast was there. The original guys were there at the premiere, and he's standing there in the middle, and he doesn't have a finger. Jeez. I was like, what is going on? So I immediately went to my computer and read all about the fact that they shot around this, and that there's a handful of episodes where you can catch it if you're really an eagle-eyed viewer.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, how he communicates in traffic.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh man, I didn't even know that about that.
I know.
Actor. Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah, it's just that it stood out, because they were all doing the like it's Morphin Time pose.
Nice.
At the red carpet area.
God, that's so weird.
And they all looked really thrilled about having to do that again.
Nice.
Come on, man. You want to.
Well,
taking this damn photo, guys.
So there's a couple of these guys actually showed up as cameos in this movie that I read about, and I didn't even notice at all. Like, apparently Amy Jo Johnson's in there. And I didn't even remember.
Tommy and Kimberly.
Yeah, Tommy and Kimberly show up, and I didn't even notice.
They're right there. They're in the crowd scene.
Man, I did not even notice while I was watching. It's just such a weird thing.
Yeah, so apparently he got the actor who played Tommy, I don't remember his name, but so he was at the premiere, and they kicked him out.
Jeez,
so
why?
He didn't really see the ending of the... Well, when that cameo was coming up, he knew right about where it would be, because he and Kimberly had their cell phones out.
Yeah.
And they were they were recording the giant Megazord.
Oh, okay.
That's the scene they were in.
Oh, you know what? I remember that scene, and I just did not. I was too busy looking at the phones themselves, because I was like, "What the hell is everybody taking these photos?"
Like, they're really dialed in on him at the start of that scene.
Okay.
So he hopped out into the aisle and got his cell phone out because he wanted to record the crowd's reaction.
Nice.
To their cameo, and it's really like it's not, they don't have any lines or anything, so it doesn't really feel like a cameo. They're just sort of there. And at that point, everyone was on him, and they made him leave the movie theater.
What else does that actor have to do? Come on, guys.
Give him that little win.
I know, right?
He's trying to break into MMA, but
yeah, I remember that storyline too, because he's also one of the ones that's actually trained.
Yeah, he's been trying to get a fight with CM Punk because it would be a big payday, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I think, didn't CM Punk already fight?
Oh, yeah.
And he lost, right? Like, bad.
He lost. But he gets paid a lot of money to lose.
Yeah, well.
So
it's
all good.
It's kind of similar how wrestling was, so...
Well, it's a little different, but
right,
some may argue.
Let's get this podcast back on track. So let's take a break. This has been all over the place this time. Let's take a little break, and then we'll we'll get into Power Rangers, and we'll start with the characters. Teenagers with attitude who are infused with superpowers harness their abilities to save the world. I was really disappointed that I didn't hear teenagers with attitude.
With attitude.
And in this movie, because
felt like they were dancing around it.
Yeah, they were dancing around it, and there's a lot of fan service in this movie, but that's one of the things they did not do. This movie is directed by Dean Israelite. I'm assuming is how you pronounce his name. The only thing he's done like short movies. He's like South African, and he did a movie called Project Almanac, which is the one he's most known for, which was like Michael Bay produced. And that's pretty much all he's done. He's been attached to other movies. Like, I think they wanted him to direct Doctor Strange, but they went with Scott Derrickson instead. And they also, I think he's slated to do the War Games remake. You remember a movie, War Games? Like that?
Yes.
It's like an 80s movie.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good little movie. I would be interesting to see like what direction they would go with that. You know, this movie starring. I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's name. Is it Docker, Daker, Dakra? There's so many different ways that you could even Dacre. I don't know. It's something like that. Montgomery as Jason or the Red Ranger, and he's been acting for a long time. He's from Australia. So he has this really thick accent, which is kind of weird when you see him in interviews, because he's manages this like American accent fairly well. And the only other thing he's known for is he will be in season 2 of Stranger Things. So we'll see this guy again in Stranger Things. So it'll be interesting.
Okay.
Naomi Scott is Kimberly, who's the Pink Ranger, and the only other thing she's been in really is Terra Nova. All these actors are mainly just like short films actors, and they haven't really been in a lot. R.J. Seiler is Billy, or the Blue Ranger. He's another guy that's just been in short films. Ludi Lin is Zach. He's the Black Ranger, and he's been in short films, but he also shows up in the TV series Marco Polo on Netflix. Becky G is Trini. She is the Yellow Ranger, and Becky G is a singer/rapper. Like, she's actually like not an actor at all. She started her career doing like covers on YouTube, and she like blew up and just one of those like YouTube stars, and now she's in a movie, which is really weird, but that's just who she is. So that's all she's been known for. Probably one of the better known people are the next ones, which is Elizabeth Banks as Rita Repulsa, who is in the 40-Year-Old Virgin, Scrubs, and the Hunger Games. And of course, Bryan Cranston as Zordon, who's a Malcolm in the Middle, Breaking Bad, and Argo. Probably the most talented actor out of all of them. Bill Hader as Alpha 5. He did the voice of Alpha 5, and he's obviously an SNL cast member. He's in South Park, and he also was the lead in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And that's all the characters. So we rushed through these characters. Let's go ahead and get to the quirks and likes. So we're going to take another really quick break, and then we'll get into the quirks and likes here. All right, Jones, we're back here with the quirks and likes section. I am going to let you go through your quirks again. So let's.
Okay.
I love just doing spontaneous things in the middle of the podcast. It's awesome. So let's do that.
Okay. Well, I think one of the. Let me see if I can phrase this correctly here. I think there's not enough Power Rangers in the Power Rangers movie.
You know what? You are not wrong. There is. They only show up at like the last 15 minutes of the movie.
I was thinking about that. It's like the last 15 minutes of the movie, which is odd because I remember, when I was watching it, I was like, "Oh, cool! They're just gonna get right into it."
Yeah,
they got right into the ship.
Yes,
and I thought, that's when they're gonna find out who they are. They're gonna get their suits, and probably train, and instead what it turned into was like an endless origin story.
Yeah, they did it. It was a very large part of the movie was them doing an origin story, which for me, I actually didn't mind. The thing about it is I enjoyed the fact that they did this origin story mainly because one of my likes about this movie is they made all the characters a little more interesting and have a little more depth in the original show. The problem with doing that is you lost a lot of Power Rangers. Now, the thing about that is that also feels like the show because the show is exactly the same way where you really don't get a lot of Power Rangers in a lot of those episodes. It's like the very end and you get them for a little bit and then that's it. Like every once in a while you'll have them show up in the middle of the episode, but from what I remember as a kid, for the most part it was just like one weird story and then they just fought at the end and that was it. So it's just kind of a weird
Right.
thing.
Well, and in the show, there really wasn't a worry about leading double lives or
No,
going back to school.
no.
And so I understand the fact that they had to keep leaving.
Yeah.
And, it's like a superhero movie. That there's going to be training montages.
Yes.
And those are all always fun. But I just felt like they needed more time in the suits, like to get to know them.
So do you think it would have been better had they actually maybe?
I think had they
wanted
weaved
to,
it in.
Okay, all right. So like instead of just getting it at the end, just having towards the middle of the movie where they kind of figured it out, and that way you get used to them in the suits. Is what you're saying,
right? Yeah. And here's the issue. Here's the thing, because the suits are so colorful.
Oh yeah.
And over the top, but the rest of the movie has a very muted, like gritty feel. And then you've got these super shiny suits, and there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
To me, like, oh well, they're clearly in CG suits.
Yeah.
And stuff, and I mean that's something I have a problem with. It's, you can get away with that when it's Iron Man because usually they do a combination of things there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a very expensive effect to do. So, why isn't it a combination of practical, and I like that we learned more, and that was going to be one of my likes. I like that that we got into, we learn more about the characters, and they're all likable. They all have a reason.
Yes.
Why we should root for them.
Yeah,
but I think that needed to happen quicker, and I think it happens quicker if they already know each other somewhat.
Yeah,
they don't have to really know each other, but if they were all just in detention together, that might have had a Breakfast Club feel.
Yes.
But I mean, they wouldn't have been strangers. It would have been a shorter coming together process.
Yeah, and I think that would have helped the movie out a lot also, because the one of the problems I had with the movie is how much, because they spend so much time getting to know each other, there's certain things that are just not even explained, kind of like more into how they were chosen. So along with you talking about how they just happened to end up here, everything is just happenstance, which is really strange because in the original they're chosen. Like there's a reason why they have personalities and abilities that gives them the reason why you choose these teenagers. They don't do that in this one because they kind of just by happenstance just happen to have a team that can work together, sort of, in a quarry and then discover the coins. So it's almost as if these kids specifically are not special. It's almost as if anybody could have just walked into that quarry and got those coins and it would have been fine. And that's one of the problems, one of the big issues I had with the movie, because they are chosen for a reason, and they hint on it throughout this movie, kind of like when Billy morphs for the first time, because it's almost like there was a connection there because he thinks about it and he's trying to break them apart and he changes, he like morphs just accidentally, automatically, which could be explained that like one of the reasons why he's chosen is because of his kind heart and that he's able to control everybody. You know what I mean? Like he's the one that's like more of the heart of the team and not necessarily the leader of the team, but the heart of the team, and that's what is a part of them to make them work together, and that's why he morphed. But they don't explain any of that. It's just not explained at all, and it makes the characters less special, even though we actually learn more about the characters themselves, which I think is a really difficult thing to do. I don't know how they did that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's. Well, you're right. I mean, it's a fine line to walk, and I mean, this is usually why a lot of times these kinds of movies don't work so well.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and I mean, they work maybe a little bit better when you have standalone movies leading in.
Yes.
To them. But, you know,
yeah. God, that would be.
I just think if they know each other ahead of time, you know.
Be such a freaking financial risk. Oh,
yeah. No, I'm not suggesting that. I mean, that would be a crazy risk.
I mean, I get that you're not saying that, but like
the Red Ranger movie, it's like, no, we can't do it like this. You're fired. Can you do it for $5 million? Can you do it for 30? Chronicle was done on 30. Can you do it for 30? Well, no.
Oh man. The risk for that would be insane. And you'd have to have, because unlike the Avengers, these are like they're not well-known actors. Like you don't know if they can even hold them.
I know.
That would be
no, they can't. I'm just saying that they can't on their own.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
You know, there's no help for the Rangers once they leave the ship.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why Zordon remains quiet. Especially when they get into the, the Zords for the first time.
Yes.
And I just was like, you know, should they be able to figure this out so quickly? And there wasn't even like a button for them all to press that came up on their HUD to form the Megazord. It just happened.
It just happens. They just say hold on to each other, and it forms.
And I mean, that really bugs me. Yeah. I mean, like, I suppose there's something poetic about that.
Yes, there is.
But I mean, those things have to be designed to do that.
Yes, right.
if that's the case.
And Zordon just
that's one of those things where, by the way, once you learn to control these things, and you fight as one, it becomes one giant kick-ass robot. And that's really the only one. That's in the show. The only way things ever got done, because they always. In every episode, it was always the same. They try it with the stupid individual little dinosaurs and stuff, and that's never enough.
No.
So then they form the thing, and hopefully that's enough.
Yeah.
But then, there was also the Green Ranger and then the White Ranger.
Yes.
And they could form an even bigger one if that wasn't
enough. Oh, that's great.
The town Angel Grove. I mean, it's like in a fishing community.
Yeah, it's like fishing / like mining community, which is kind of weird.
So, I mean, that says north. Like, what does that say? Eastern Seaboard, or maybe?
I mean, it would depend. I mean, it's on the coast somewhere, I would assume. But I mean,
it's such a departure from. Like what was clearly sunny weather.
California,
sunny California.
It was definitely. I mean, maybe it's just further north in California. Cause I have no idea. But
and I mean, that little town gets destroyed. I mean, it looks like what you would think would happen if a giant golden jackass came walking through.
Oh yeah,
it was just kicking every building.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, like, how does a little town like that recover?
Yeah.
I mean, because even if you get FEMA money for it, let's just say you do. I mean, it's like years and years of recovery. I just don't see people being that thrilled about the Power Rangers being there in their little town when every time they tussle, this happens.
I know, right?
Oh, jeez.
Oh, that's great.
So the last thing, this is just a real little thing that was driving me nuts the whole time, and I wish it would have come back. But the van, that van sequence, and the fact that Billy's van gets destroyed, that his mom never knows about it, and it's just like sort of the thing. It's just left behind. The fact that they, I mean, my God, you would never go anywhere.
The thing is the thing is that happens a lot throughout this movie, because all of them, like just about all of them, destroy something. Because
that's a good point.
Like, and so Jason, it comes back because he's like, well, maybe the frame is straight and the engine runs, maybe you can fix it. So at least that scene's there. And even though it makes no sense that like Trinity's parents didn't react to her getting slammed against walls at her house, at least there's a scene where she's fixing the walls. But they never go back to Billy.
Breeze past it.
They breeze past the fact that Billy's mom's van is just destroyed. Oh man, it doesn't come back at all. It's just such a weird thing.
I mean, I can remember when my half brother and I were fighting in his room, and I stuck my foot through the thin drywall, you know, and there was just a hole. There was a foot-sized hole.
Yeah.
Okay. There wasn't that much damage.
Yeah.
Like in Trinity's room. But all he did was move a poster down 6 inches. It was like that was already right in place.
Nice.
And we didn't get away with it for 1 second. You know, the moment my dad came in to check on us, he's like, "Why is that poster down?" It was down 6 inches, Graham. I swear it was only moved 6 inches. And I mean, we didn't get away with it at all. Like immediately. So I mean, the fact that these parents are just like missing cars and busted sinks, and it's just.
Oh man, that's just such a weird thing.
All right, I think that's it for me as far as quirks.
All right, well, we went through the quirks pretty well. The only other thing that I have to say, because I got into some of the things I talked about, like why we didn't really get to know why they were chosen and the other kind of weird creative decisions they had. But one of the weird creative decisions I thought that was weird is I thought Alpha 5 was kind of a weird robot. I don't know how you felt about this character, but I was kind of like mixed on him because I thought he was like a cool little robot character, but it's just like weird, and he had these extending arm things, and he was like, it almost seemed like he was like half organic, half, you know, it's like, it was an interesting take on Alpha 5, and I was like really unsure about it. So I was kind of curious how you felt about it, because I was just kind of weird, but I just thought the eye thing was kind of a strange decision. Because the original one, it was just kind of like a Geordie type thing. You know, it was like a visor-like thing.
Yeah, because it was a kid in there or something, you know. I just think that, you know, if you're going to do an all-animated thing, I guess it kind of made sense because he was training to help him fight.
Yeah.
But that's not really what Alpha 5 was.
No, that's not what he was in the show at all.
So I guess they tried to give him
just a bigger
purpose,
you
know,
bigger meaning,
like a reason for being there.
Yeah,
but he didn't feel like he had any weight to me.
Oh yeah,
which was one of the things about like how he was moving around. And...
Yeah, which is a common problem amongst when they do fully animated characters. That sometimes that just happens, especially with robots. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but that does happen a lot in movies.
I'll tell you, for some reason, every time he said something, I was trying to figure out who the voice was, and I kept thinking Patton Oswalt. For some reason.
No.
Like I was just like, God, who is that voice?
Nice.
Like, I mean, because it was just different enough.
Yeah, because it's...
And, you know, then I saw Bill Hader. I was like, well, okay, of course it's Bill Hader.
Bill Hader.
I mean, like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because he's done a lot of voice work. So it's
but,
just
like, that was really throwing me off with the alpha scenes because it was just driving me nuts. Like, God, who is that voice?
The whole time you're just thinking about, man, It's amazing how you can get distracted like that. It's kind of like
Right.
you watch a movie that has a lesser known actor, and every time the scene happens, you're trying to figure out what you've
You're
seen
trying
him
to
in.
figure out what you've seen him in.
All right, do you got any other quirks? Because that was my only ones because we kind of discussed through them pretty good.
No, I think that's it for me.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into the likes. I thought the thing that we talked about earlier, and that I'm just going to reiterate on, is I thought the characters were really great. Like I like that they made Billy kind of like this. Instead of making him just this nerd, they kind of just made
Yeah.
him just strange and kind of weird because he's like autistic, and so it was really cool to just have that aspect to this character rather than just doing a very stereotypical thing, which is I think is what they did really well with this movie. There's less of a stereotype as opposed to what they did in the original. Because
The
in
show.
the
Yeah.
show, Billy was just a nerd, and then like Jason was just a jock, and that was it. So and you got like a little more just detail with these characters to kind of make you care for them more, which I thought was a really good choice. The same thing with Kimberly, who's just like a cheerleader, but in this one she's like shunned, by the cheerleader type of thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it was just like a really cool way for them, I think, for them to make the characters more relatable and just better in general. So I thought that was just a really good decision that they did with this.
And so it came up. I mean, so and I don't think this is a real important thing to maybe dwell on.
Yeah.
But the idea that when they have that one scene and you find out that Trini is gay.
Yeah, she's gay.
And that she's struggling with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, well, that makes you understand her character.
Yes, it does.
A lot more. So that was one of my likes too, that I felt that they were all relatable in very specific ways.
Oh yeah. And having that campfire scene was like, I thought that was a really good way to slow the movie down and for you to get more into these characters, which is what they needed to do anyway. Like they needed to know each other. They were just strangers. And again, the problem is like I feel like this movie's gotten a lot of mixed reviews, and that's because there's a lot of mixed things like that in this movie. Because it was nice to have this little slowdown and have these characters talk about this, but then again, you kind of lose some of the aspect of the Power Rangers in the process. So it's like there's a lot of give and take in this movie through the whole thing, and it's just kind of a really weird aspect to it. The only other thing I have to say about this movie is that I really liked was that it is a fan service movie. For like they have the really weird Alpha Phi I thing that he always did, which is always so stupid, but they have that in there. They have the Power Rangers song in there. It's thrown in the weirdest way possible.
I actually hated that.
It was like it was the most thrown in thing that they could do. But they did it for a reason, and it's obviously a fan service thing. And the whole thing with the fan service is there's a lot of that in this movie, and you take the good and the bad with it. So along with that, this movie is a really fun movie, and it's really bad, as it should be. I think it should be fun and terrible, because that's what
right.
the show was, and I thought that they did a really good job portraying that in this movie, So it's like, it's a weird...
It's supposed to be fun and bad.
And bad.
All right.
It's supposed to be fun and bad. And so having that weird song that was just so tossed in was just like such a bad thing.
The editing behind it.
Oh, yeah.
It
was abrupt. It was completely abrupt.
It just the whole soundtrack I think is a mess throughout the entire movie. I should have mentioned that, but so I'm glad you mentioned the song, because that got me thinking. Geez, every song that they've had here has felt really out of place.
Oh yeah, it definitely has. Every single song, even just going with the scene where you get, which might be a character development thing, but they never really explain it. You have Trini that's just standing on mountain and she's listening to like heavy metal or something playing when she's doing this really serene type. It's just like weird stuff like that that obviously was a decision after the fact, and it's tossed in really strangely. So I'm not sure what those decisions were, but I think again this is one of the problems with this movie is it's like you're really mixed about it. The only other thing I want to say, I do have one more thing, and that's just I really enjoyed this kind of creative camera thing that they did at the very beginning of the movie, where they have the camera in the car on like a gimbal, and it was just kind of a creative thing. I wish there was a little more of that in the movie, but I like that it was shown as if it was shot in one sequence, and the way it does cuts is it turns the camera around. The only problem I have with it is it was a very constant turn, and it was one turn. There wasn't like a different angle that came from it. It was the same angle every time it did the turn. So it was just kind of one of those things where like it was a creative decision that was pretty cool, but I thought the execution wasn't the best. But I did thought it was just cool to have this kind of weird camera angle that turned around and flowed and everything, and it worked really well because when you turned all the way around, you didn't get to see the front because they're looking behind them and you're seeing what they're seeing behind them. And then when it turns back around, something pops up that they have to dodge. So it was just like cool for the audience. And I thought it was cool as for the director to do something like that. And that's all I have for my likes.
All right. So I did like the backstory that we got with the characters. I just felt like overall that needed to be pushed towards the front of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe if they were in their suits a little bit quicker, they could have revealed those kinds of things as they went along. And maybe it wouldn't have been such, in terms of pacing, it wouldn't have been such a jumbled mess at times.
Yeah.
But I felt like the lore and the mythology, the way that they started this movie with Zordon being the original Red Ranger, the fact that Rita turned against him, and the idea that maybe he's not being entirely truthful in his relationship with Rita, because that was one of the things I was getting too.
Yep.
Just from some of the things that she was saying and that she was reacting. Obviously they have this history together, and I felt like I was really sold on the idea that every world that has life has Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense to me. So I'm really sold on that, and I love that part of the mythology. I think that's a good base to build the movie around.
Yeah,
so
that was a very good way to do it.
I didn't need to know any more. I like the idea that maybe there's some stuff we don't know about Zordon and Rita, because, obviously they tease the idea of Tommy Oliver coming into the picture.
Yeah, and mid-credit
scene. She's got that gold coin. Yeah, the mid-credit scene.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's got the gold coin on her, and that could only really mean one thing.
Yeah, and she's also has the, she was the original Green Ranger. So that she has, so that they do the mid-credit scene, which I didn't stay for, but I read about at the end and afterwards, and I thought that was just a really cool thing that they said Tommy Oliver will be joining them, and there's just a green jacket there, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that makes you think, they might go and get maybe a bigger name actor if they can do another one of these movies.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll be able to.
And I think it's going to happen.
I don't know.
I do.
I don't know if they made enough money for this one for them to do it. It would be interesting to see them move forward and get a bigger name actor, because Tommy Oliver was the one that everybody wanted to be. Tommy Oliver was awesome. He was the one that was the most skilled fighter out of all of them. And so,
and when he comes into the picture, it changes
the dynamic.
In terms of the dynamic of the story. It changes everything.
Yes.
The idea that you could have two characters with a connection, a villain and a hero falling for each other.
Yeah.
You know, so he's got more of a shady, you know, he's got that mark on him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a cool edge to being the Green Ranger.
Oh yeah.
Because of that.
Yep.
But you know, I mean that dynamic, and I'm glad it really didn't happen that they came together as friends. That was one of my likes.
Oh yeah.
That there wasn't really a love story. You know, there's kind of these moments, but I think it's more important that they're friends.
Yes.
And I mean, like that really, I think the payoff is when they're getting pushed into that pit.
Yes.
Because they're all, you know, looking at each other, and you know that could be the end.
That could be the end. Yeah, you get a very
wasn't really
Toy Story 3 type thing at the end of that movie, towards the end.
So, you know, I mean that's I I don't know if I like the, you know, the CG costumes and everything.
Yeah, I was kind of mixed on them.
But you know, and maybe had we seen them more, I
maybe
sure.
You're right. That might have helped because you might have been able to get used to it. But they were really jarring, and that's all. Even at the beginning, when they announced the movie and they showed what their costumes were going to look like, it was kind of. It's another time period where I feel like they just were like overproduced,
they're over designed.
They're over designed,
for sure.
I think this is one of those time periods where it's like simpler is better, and I think that I don't have a problem with people going and changing something to make it more detailed, but this is a common problem amongst movies when they do child characters, because most of the time these characters come from either cartoon shows or TV series that were really cheap to make.
Yes,
and so
right.
When you look at them, like, you don't need a lot of stuff there. It's the same problem I have with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Transformers, where it's like you can go simpler, it's fine. Like people people are okay with it. They're used to seeing the way they are. It's okay to make whatever you see your version of this character to look more realistic. I get that, but there's no reason why it needs to be over designed, and this is a common problem. And so that was probably my biggest issue, is there's just way too much detail that doesn't really need to be there, including just like having all these little bitty like swirls and stuff on the parts that's not armored kind of thing. Like just like this, you don't even really need that. You know, it could be just like a consistent pattern, a subtle consistent pattern probably would have been a better choice. But it just is what it is. It's just kind of one of those things that happens in Hollywood for some weird reason.
I do like that they gave them armor, though.
Oh, yeah.
And that it made the difference. You know, like, oh, yeah, it makes all the difference.
Oh, yeah, it does.
That they're in their armor. I really was hoping that we would get It's Morphin Time in this movie, and we didn't get that.
No, you definitely got It's Morphin Time.
You know,
no, you got It's Morphin Time. That happens in the movie when
well, but we don't get the signature.
Oh, you're talking about the hand.
I mean, they're just like they're standing around this circle thing, and I'm like, no, that's fine. That's gotta push that to the beginning of the movie. That's got to be the first time, and then at the end they have to pull out their thing. Damn it! Like there had to be a way to do that somehow.
It's another time where they didn't quite. Like, there's a lot of fan service, but there's stuff that they didn't put in the movie.
but there's the one really good thing that they don't get right at all.
It's more.
I was just like, no, no, this has to happen earlier.
Yeah.
Push that to the beginning. They don't need to go to the damn spaceship every time. It's time. They just have to, bam. Yeah,
there's definitely a huge disconnect in this movie, which you talked about earlier, between the ship and them being outside of the ship. Like, it's like all of a sudden there's no connection to the ship at all. So they don't have things where they can morph outside of the ship. and Zordon's not in communication with him outside of the ship. Like, it's just kind of a weird little thing, but it is what it is.
All right.
You got any other
That's
likes?
it for me.
That's it?
Yeah, no, that's
okay. It. All right, so let's go ahead and rate this thing. So, I think this movie it's fun and it's awful. That's exactly how Power Rangers should be. And so the way I see it is, if you're a fan of Power Rangers, I say rent it. Everyone else skip it. And that's what I'm going with.
Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good recommendation. I'd say rent it. It's worth the Netflix. It's fun. Rent it. Drink some booze like they were. Right? Were they drinking beer around that campfire?
Well, you know what?
Did I get that correct?
Definitely, it seemed like Trudy for sure was drinking beer. So clearly,
that's a very dark bottle,
right? I mean, I guess it could have been root beer.
She's the lesbian alcoholic.
All of a sudden, you could do a very dark version of Power Rangers.
Right, yeah. Really, with all of them, right?
Right, yeah, right.
Zach loses his mom.
Billy gets committed. It's just...
Yeah, Billy gets committed. Oh,
it could get really bad.
Interesting.
All right.
Yeah, so rent it.
All right, let's go ahead and sign out then.
Netflix. I'm sorry that you have to do all this work at the end here.
Oh, God, I freaking lost you
there. So we just lost
the Skype connection.
And I kept talking, and I looked over at Graham, and I'm like, are you intentionally not moving? And then my whole computer just locked up. And I was like, uh-oh. We're going to have to resync here.
Yep.
So that was a fun 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. It was right at the end of the podcast.
Getting a little behind the scenes of the podcast, or neither one of us are anywhere near each other.
No, we're nowhere near each other. So still rely on technology to this day.
Yep.
Like that reminds me of this time I was having to deal with this graphic designer who was a biker too, a big guy.
Yeah.
And they were having internet issues, and so I drove out to him.
Yeah.
To go and pick up these files because they were really large, and his computer was having a hard time saving these print files. It was taking like an hour to save out the files.
Jeez.
I was like, geez, they're for banners. You can build them at half size.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, I go out there, and it's this big burly biker, and I'm just like, anyone could be a graphic designer. I wasn't really judging him. I was just sort of surprised.
Yeah.
But he kept saying to me, like, "Oh, are you angry at me?" Like, he wasn't ready. Like, I drove out there fighting through Friday traffic in that miserable city that you live in.
Yeah.
And so I was not happy at all by the time I got there.
Yeah.
To find out that he didn't have anything for me to bring back.
Oh, jeez.
And he's like, "Are you going to hit me? You look like you're really angry." I'm like, "You're worried about me taking a swing at you?" Is that gonna get these files done here?
That's interesting.
I mean, I understand what you're going through, buddy, but
that's such a weird problem to have. God, it's so easy to.
I know.
Anyway.
It's just internet going down. Like,
oh yeah,
just one thing fails, and all these other, like, you go back to having to hand deliver things.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, it's terrible. All right, let's sign out. So, if anybody wants to contact us, we always have our home on the web, halfpastpodcast.com.
Like us on Facebook.
Rate us on iTunes, and we're on Google Play.
We're on Stitcher and Libsyn. I love my Stitcher app.
Not even a sponsor. Email us at halfpastcast@gmail.com, especially if you're at Stitcher. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com.
Yep. Twitter us. come Twitter me at Half Past Podcast.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Next week, we're going to do The Fate of the Furious, so it's going to be that fun movie. We'll see how that one goes.
8. Hashtag for 8. Oh my God, this is gonna be great. It's like showing up to our own train wreck.
Oh, this is the Half Past Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
Jonesy.
See you next flick.
Oh.